Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Nicole Lamberson, and I'm a physician assistant. I'm also a member of the Medicating Normal team, where I work doing outreach for the film. And I'm a member of the prescribed harm community, which means I was also a patient who took and withdrew from prescribed psychiatric medication. Our guests today are three other medical professionals. We have Dr. Christy Huff, Dr. Mark Horowitz, and Dr. Peter Gordon. All four of us share something in common. Aside from being trained as medical professionals, we all took prescribed psychiatric medication that caused harm, and we've all spoken out publicly about our experiences. So thank you so much for joining us today, our guests and everyone in the audience. And I'm really excited about this conversation. First, I think we can all just briefly introduce ourselves, a short version of our story, and sort of how we came to take psychiatric medication and then be harmed by it. So who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
I'm Christy Huff, and I was prescribed Xanax back in 2015, and I was taking it what I thought very briefly for insomnia. I was having a crisis with dry eyes, and I couldn't sleep. It was so painful. And within 3 weeks, I started developing dependence and tolerance. But we didn't really know what was going on. I was misdiagnosed and eventually figured out with my own research on the internet that I was experiencing Xanax dependence and interdose withdrawal. And I ended up switching over to Valium, and it took me over 3 years to taper off. I was pretty ill the entire time. And about 2 years off right now and doing much better, but still have symptoms related to my benzodiazepine injury. And I'm currently director of Benzodiazepine Information Coalition, where we educate about the adverse effects of prescribed benzos.
And just quickly, Christy, what is your medical history or your training?
Oh, yes, I should have mentioned that. I'm a cardiologist. I'm not currently in practice, but I've been out of practice since 2011, I believe, after my child was born. But yeah, I was trained in internal medicine residency and then cardiology after that.
Mark, you want to go?
Hi, my name's Mark Horowitz. I'm a psychiatry trainee. I also did a PhD in the neuroscience of psychiatry and how antidepressants affect the brain and the biology of depression. And I'm currently a clinical research fellow in psychiatry. I also took the drugs that I prescribe and that I studied. I first took an antidepressant when I was 21. I'm a kind of a neurotic Woody Allen character type of person, and I wasn't very happy back then at all. Related a lot, I think, in retrospect to my course at university and anyway, a lot of different existential identity issues I see in retrospect. It's hard to tell exactly what happened over the next few years, but I was diagnosed with further conditions after starting an antidepressant. The diagnosis that I was given was narcolepsy because I was very tired all the time. And that led to further prescriptions of psychiatric drugs, stimulants, which caused anxiety, which led to more antidepressants, to the point where over the 10 or 15 years after that, I ended up on, at different points, 4 or 5 psychiatric drugs. We went through about 40 altogether. During that period of time, my ability to function got worse and worse, to the point where I had trouble keeping up with work, went to part-time work, and I thought about quitting to go on disability. It also had a very big effect on my relationships, my social life, and I was always told that it was narcolepsy, that I had a bad sleeping disorder. And I sought out the help of specialists again and again. sort of at rock bottom a couple of years ago, I decided to try to come off all this medication. And I kind of discovered a couple of things in that process. One, it was an incredibly hard process to do. There were awful side effects. I tried before in the past much too quickly, and I ended up having all sorts of symptoms, panic, trouble sleeping, really to the point of being suicidal, which was not my kind of baseline neurotic self, something quite different. So I sort of discovered it was very hard to come off these drugs. I discovered that the guidance that was given by the professors and experts that I had studied with was very unhelpful. And I realized that people on online peer support communities, especially surviving antidepressants, had much better knowledge and much better advice to give than the specialists and academics that I studied with. So I'm actually still coming off 4 psychiatric drugs. I'm still on 4 of them, but at much lower doses, 2.5 years into the process. And I've spent the last couple of years trying to communicate what I found on online forums to my colleagues through academic articles, where I really see myself as a translator. I'm just putting neuroscientific terms to what a lot of very brave and clever people have worked out off their own bats in their own kitchens most of the time. That's me.
Thanks, Mark. Dr. Gordon?
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, please just call me Peter. I retired from medicine a year ago. I was an NHS, I've been an NHS doctor in Scotland for 25 years. All that time I worked as a psychiatrist. My wife is a GP. I have 2 grown-up children. I was started on a medication called Proxetine. It's it's maybe known as Seroxat or Paxil. I was started on this in 1997, late 97, for anxiety. This was during the Defeat Depression campaign. At the time I was struggling, I admit that. We had our first child was born. My sleep was poor. I've always been probably constitutionally a little anxious. Never had depressive disorder at all in my time. Anyway, within a few months of taking that, I acknowledged that the drug probably helped me a little bit. Hard to say how much, but within a few months of taking it, I tried to stop it, or I just naturally stopped it. And within 24 hours, I felt terrible, physically, mentally, and in all sorts of ways. But to cut a long story short, this is a drug that has caused me absolute hell. It's a drug that I remain on today. And it's a drug that almost cost me my life. And it's a drug that I'm still live with. I'm physiologically dependent upon it. It's hard to define that. It's a drug that excuse my language, I fucking hate. Absolutely hate this drug. It's catching up with me. I'm 53 years old. I have extensively done my best. It's not because I believe that my experience translates to all people. I think that psychiatric drugs, I'm not anti-medication. My concern is that most psychiatric drugs are prescribed on the basis of very short-term studies, and the studies cannot say anything about long-term treatment. And unless the medical profession and the scientific community listen to people who are living with these drugs in the long term, and if they ignore what we are saying, and those experiences should include those people who have positive experiences of long-term medication, but they need to listen to the fact that these medications any intervention can have the potential for harms and benefits. But long-term use is, in terms of psychiatric treatment, generally lacks an evidence base. So I'll stop there.
So briefly, my name is Nicole Lamberson, and I trained as a physician assistant. And around 2005, I was prescribed Xanax. I had some, just in hindsight, very mild stress at work, and a general practitioner prescribed Xanax with no warnings whatsoever about, any of the risks of taking it. Hindsight is 2020, and I didn't realize at the time, but when I was taking it, I started having adverse effects from it, probably quickly developed tolerance and interdose withdrawal, which was misdiagnosed as more, psychiatric distress. And I then entered the psychiatric system. And over the course of 5 years, I was prescribed 6 psychiatric medications in total. 2 were benzodiazepines and a Z drug. And then I was put on Adderall, Remeron, and Seroquel as well, which were just sort of prescribed to combat the adverse effects of the drug prior. Adderall didn't let me sleep, and so Remeron was given for sleep and Seroquel was given for sleep. Or if Adderall, made me not hungry, then Remeron was supposed to increase my appetite. Anyways, over the course of that 5 years, I became incredibly ill. Like Mark, I stopped functioning. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't read a book. I started developing all sorts of physical ailments, like rashes all over my body, severe weight loss. I discovered a story from another person like us who all took psychiatric medications and who told his story on the internet. He just happened to have really great skill of writing. And so he was in a big magazine over here in the United States that my dad happened to have a subscription to. And when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what's happened to me. Within like 7 days of reading the article, I had checked myself into a detox center, which again, hindsight is 2020. I did not realize that was not the way to go about discontinuing these medications. And I had a severe withdrawal syndrome that has persisted to date. I am a little over 8 years off of medication, and I'm still having pretty debilitating symptoms. I don't want to call them withdrawal symptoms because I don't think I'm technically in withdrawal anymore. I think I've been, my body has been damaged or insulted in some way by exposure to the medications. So that is a little bit of my story. And I think we'll just kind of move now into some of the questions. So why did all of you decide to be public about your story? Like Christy and I work together at Benzodiazepine Information Coalition, which is a nonprofit about benzodiazepines. And we get emails all the time from other medical professionals like doctors, PAs, nurse practitioners, nurses, you name it. And they don't want to tell their story publicly. They don't want to talk about it. They're scared. And on one level, that kind of annoys me because like the only reason they have someone to email who is a doctor or a PA is because we have come out and told our stories, right? So they have someone in us, but I also understand why they don't want to come forward as well. So why do you think you guys decided to speak out about this?
Well, I know for me that I was just so blindsided by what happened to me. And I just saw that there was a huge gap in medical knowledge because I would have never taken a benzodiazepine if I'd known, how badly this could go. And I never received that in my training. So that just made me so angry that a person could made sickened by a drug and, for years and years, possibly even permanently. And it's not even taught in medical school. So physicians aren't recognizing these adverse events. And so I ended up writing an open letter